Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin, and today I want to tell you the story of the sunset quilt, which I just the whole time have called the fall quilt. So stay with me. I started this quilt the last week of September and started off as just like a quilt for the channel, which who says that? I don't know. Apparently, if you have a YouTube channel, you can make a quilt for your channel. Someone had made a comment in one of my thrift hauls, oh, I see a fall quilt in your future. And it, planted a seed, and the seed has now grown for 3 months. And we have made the whole life cycle, and I'm sitting here holding the completed quilt. You guys have probably seen this along the way. If you've watched any of my previous videos, it has been a journey. So I started with the quilt pattern. It has a partial seam, which I had never done before, so I had to learn how to do that. My original color choices I did not like, or I felt like it wasn't quite right. Did a video about that, about narrowing from the color choices that I had down to the ones that I ended up with. Then sometime a couple of months later, I did a video about the lessons I had learned working on this quilt. And so that all happened. And meantime, had no recipient, like no receiver in mind if I had wanted to give this quilt away. And so got to November, and gosh, November and December, yikes, stripes. It was a rough time. And along the way, I realized, this quilt is actually the color palette is one that is not especially feminine. In fact, it kind of can go masculine. And that was just kind of a fleeting thought. And then we get into December. I had finished the quilt top, gosh, who knows how long before that. And I realized this would be a great Christmas gift for my dad. So, I've been keeping my Instagram updated with pictures. Of course, I had made videos on all this, and got to the place like, oh, I could do this for my dad maybe, finish it up. So at this point, I have to pause the story and tell a whole other story about a woman named Sissy, who is a really great friend now that I met through YouTube. And I never thought I would say that phrase either. So apparently this is just a first fall quilt, first quilt for a channel. Actually, that's not totally true, but we'll roll with it. And then this story of my friend Sissy. So we did the very first video. We released it on June the 14th of 2022. June the 21st of 2022, I got a message from a lady in my Facebook inbox. And she introduced herself, and she said where she was from and that she would like for me to come speak to her quilting group about using men's shirts from the thrift store, and if I was interested in that. And it had been a week, and I was blown away, completely thrown, just almost rattled. I mean, pleased, obviously, but like, wait, what? Somebody that I've never met wants me to come speak to their quilting group. And I'll be honest, when we started the YouTube channel, I guess the first thing to say is we didn't know what to expect, but we really didn't expect that the first video would kind of have as many views as it did. And so the idea that I would have anyone reach out to me, I wasn't even expecting any comments, to be honest with you. So when the comments started coming on that very first video, why I love quilting with men's dress shirts, that in and of itself was kind of crazy. And then to have someone reach out to me through Facebook and then want me to come speak at their group. So of course I'm like, yes, I'm very interested. do not know this person from Adam's house cat. So she's like, well, let me give you my number. We'll get in touch. So called her on a day off that I had. When I tell you that we talked for over an hour on the phone about everything under the sun, that is not an understatement. We talked for over an hour on the phone, complete strangers, about everything under the sun. We talked about pharmacy, we talked about teaching, we talked about science, of course we talked about quilting. So Sissy has been with me from the very beginning. And a lot of you haven't, by the way, thank you. So great. So awesome. And Sissy, I have come to find out, is fearless. So it never crossed her mind that I would be like, what? No way. Or anything of the sort. So she messaged me and then I called her and we talked for an hour. And she said, I want you to come speak to my group. I've got to talk to the other ladies that help run the group. I'm like, that's great. When do you think that'll be? Sometime in October. Great. We'll get in touch later. So thus began the friendship. And so a month went by and then we kind of talked, okay, we're starting to plan. And then, okay. And her original thing was, I think you're near me based on the things that I had said. And we're about a couple of hours away from each other. And so not a huge deal for me to go up and speak to her group. And at one point she said, and you can stay with me and my husband. We would love to have you. And I said, okay, great. And I go to work, I'm telling the story, and all of my technicians in actuality made that face that they make the emoji from, where it's like the scream, like the hands are up and the face is blue and the eyes have gone completely white, like that. So that emoji is what my technicians at my former work did. They were like, you're not going to do that. Like, why not? Kathy, you don't know this person. Yes, I do. I've talked to her. And they're like, the face palm. Actually, all of the emojis, the face palm, the big, big open eyes. And I'm like, I think she's okay. I think she's great. And my oldest tech and most experienced in life is like, your husband is going with you, right? And at that point, I had not thought that. I had surprisingly had not given that any thought. I give everything else thought, but had not given that any thought. And so we made this plan, and Sissy and I are texting back and forth and talking back and forth. And so we load up on a Thursday and drove up to the mountain to speak to these fantastic ladies in this quilting group, and stayed with Sissy and her husband, John, in their beautiful house that has this amazing view of the mountain and just a wonderful community. The ladies there, so just inviting. They were engaged, and I guess do what I do and talked about shirts and was there, for the whole evening, spent the night, came back the next day, and loved spending time with Sissy and her husband, John, and their group. It was just a delightful experience. But that afternoon when we had gotten there, I had brought almost all my fabric, most of the quilts that I had, a lot of the projects I was working on, just because I didn't know really kind of what I was going to be talking about. So I just brought everything. So when I got to her house, it's like, here I come with totes. Giselle said in a comment, I think last week, Kathy, you come with a lot of baggage. And let me tell you, that was a perfect example. So we came in and Sissy and I sat down on the couch and of course started talking quilting. And I had brought a quilt that I had recently had long arm quilted. And I was a little less than pleased. It was a computer quilted, long arm quilted. So it wasn't hand quilting and it wasn't quilting that I had done. And it wasn't the long arm quilting that the person does it, which turns out what Sissy does. And so, and I knew that we had actually had that conversation about her long arm quilter quilting machine had been in service and she hadn't had it and got it back. Anyway, long story short, actually, no, long story long. We were talking about that quilt and I was asking her, there was like a little at repeating places on that quilt. And so I brought it with me and was like, what is this? And she said, well, it's on a computer and there may have been something in the machine that it would like bump and it made that little in the line of the quilting. And so she showed me her quilts that she had quilted, and she does beautiful work. And she really likes the personal touch when she does quilts and really likes to mull over it and think about it a lot. And we had talked about this leading up to me coming to visit. And we were talking about long arming and how little I knew about long arming and how much she likes long arm quilting. I kind of am a piecing person. I really like the color theory. I like the pattern. I like the choosing. I like the, matching it up. You know how I feel about nested seams. So the piecing is my favorite. But there are a whole slew of you out there that like the quilting part, which is mind-blowing to me because it is a labor of love for me, for the actual quilting. And the thing about that is, whatever part you like, it's easy to think that that's the most important part, or that's like, so I notice people's piecing. But the people who like the quilting part notice the quilting, and the quilting can make or break a quilt. And I'm discovering this, and so I'm having more and more of an appreciation for that part of the craft and art and the artistry behind that. So anyway, gosh, I'm going on. But we were talking about the long arm quilting with the computer versus long arm quilting where somebody is actually manually choosing the pattern. And I said, I really like the idea of that, but sometimes I just need a quilt done. And she said, oh my goodness, if you ever need a quilt done for the channel, I'd be happy to long arm it for you. And I went, oh my, I would never. And she goes, no, I mean it, really. And she does not long arm as a service or for payment. She does it for friends and loved ones and her own quilts. And I was like, well, if I ever get there, and this is in October, if I get to a place, she said, I can turn it around quick for you. So if it's something that you need quickly, then just let me know. Okay, so that's this. That's the friendship side story about Sissy and long arm quilting. So it gets to be December, and I realize I have my backing all put together, have my binding all put together, stitched together, ready to go. And it's like maybe 3 weeks to Christmas, maybe 2 weeks to Christmas. I hope it was 3. I'm embarrassed if it was 2. And I texted my friend and said, hey, how would you feel about long arming a quilt for me? And so I texted her, and knowing how generous her spirit is and how fearless she is, I just texted her, and she just responded in fine style and said, I would love to do that. I'd be delighted to do that. And I told her that I was going to do it for my dad for Christmas. And she said, I'm wrapping up some, all my projects, and, send it to me as soon as you can. I had it to her in 2 days. And this particular quilt, which I will eventually show you, I guess I should stop and show you, but we'll get there. The blocks are on the bias. And so if you've ever done any blocks that end up on the bias and you put it together on point, the rough edge of the quilt has a propensity to stretch because it's on the bias. And so they advise that you put a stay stitch, the quilt police, I don't know who they are. People who know. I'm not one of those people. People who know tell you should put a stay stitch around the edge of your quilt if it's sewn on point, so that as you're quilting it and handling it, it doesn't stretch out of shape. So I realized the day that I was going to send it to her, I didn't sew stay stitch, and I didn't want her to be responsible for that. So I did the jankiest stay stitch you have ever seen in your whole life at about a widely varying 1/8 to almost a 1/4 inch all the way around. And so much, I was embarrassed. So much so I put a little note, please disregard the janky stay stitch. I just did this so that it wouldn't get torn up. So she takes a quilt. I'm pretty sure she turned it around in a week. I'm not positive. And that those of you that know her, Sissy, will not be surprised that she turned it around in a week. And so we texted back and forth. As soon as she got it, texted back and forth, what were you thinking? Send me pictures of what the designer did, which, time out, Julie Popa is the designer of the quilt pattern. The actual quilt pattern name is Sunset. Sunset Quilt Pattern by Julie Popa. I love it. I think it's so beautiful. And we liked what she had done in part with some of the quilting. And I told Sissy, this is what I would like. This is what I think would look good. Here's the thing. And she said, I got it. So let me show it to you. So here it is. Here's the quilt. And that was a long time to get there with no quilt. I apologize for those of you that are just like, just show me the quilt. And I have been that YouTube watcher. Why are you talking? I want to see the quilt. So here's the quilt. And you can see the way this is made up. It is, well, you may be able to tell. It's blocks that connect, and then where they connect, it makes it almost look like lattice work. The original designer did a very large number of colors, and like there was no repeating pattern. And I kind of tend toward I started to say simplistic, just simple and minimalistic look. And so that's what I went with. For those of you that are wondering, are there shirt fabrics in this? Are there quilting cottons? Yes, there are both. The blue stripe is that blue linen that I have loved from the beginning. The brown is a shirt. Actually, all of the solids are shirts. So brown, blue, this kind of mustard twill, and then the forest green is a shirt. Also, this burgundy red plaid is a shirt. And then the 3 remaining were fat quarters that I got at my local quilt store. And I've just liked the color. And if you want to watch the other 2 videos I've made, one of them is called Fall Quilt, I think. And then the other is about choosing color. And I actually talk about the colors that I started with and then how I didn't like them and how I ended up with this. I have to tell you, I really like this quilt. It is a little bit of it almost does that optical illusion. It can make your eyes cross because it's so geometric in nature. I like it because I like that kind of stuff. But my very favorite part of this whole quilt is the quilting. And I loved it when I got it back in the mail from Sissy in like a week, which is ridiculous that she turned that around so fast and did such beautiful work. What she did is she actually matched the thread color to the piecing and mirrored the lines of that lattice work with the color of those strip pieces. And then in the white spaces, it's not quite white. It might look that way on screen. It's kind of it has just a tinge of cream in it. She did this beautiful angular pattern that has a little loop in the center. And then there's like a little, I don't know what you call that. It's like a little windmill, almost like a boomerang that has 4 sides instead of, but it's just this little wavy feature in the center diamond/square of every block. And so there's the straight line quilting, there's the design feature, and then there's some curves. So it's just a really beautiful marriage of, there's some curves to take the edge off of the angles. The straight line really highlights the piecing, and then this fun little detail in each of these diamonds. And not surprising that she did beautiful, gorgeous work, but it far exceeded what I could have imagined. And just like my note to her, oh my goodness, I apologize for the janky stay stitch, she sent back with a note, hey, there are some threads on the back. Wash it and dry it first. Don't pick at it. Don't cut them. Wait and see what will come out in the wash. So apparently we both wanted to please the other with our work. And I'm above and beyond pleased, just blown away. I knew I loved the quilting, but when I started the binding and was, how you will be just holding, a machine stitch to the front, hand bind the back. And I'm just running this quilt through my hands, sitting on my couch, sitting right here. And I'm just turning it over in my hands. And I turned to my husband, I said, the quilting is my favorite part, hands down. It's so beautiful. I'm going to turn around and show you the back. I'm not going to turn around. I'm going to turn the quilt around and show you the back. We may have to do it. I may have to get my husband to take a picture of the actual fabric. Uh-oh. I knew I was going to do this. I do this every quilt story video. I turn it over and all the threads that were on me are now on the quilt, and then I can't leave it alone. The backing fabric is it's just kind of a nice pumpkin orange. This thing is covered in lint. I am dying. I'm dying on camera right now. It's just kind of a pumpkin orange with little angular marks that are roughly the colors that are in the front. So it echoes the colors in the front. And as much as I love the quilting on the front is how much I love the quilting on the back. So she did a color that's very similar to the actual backing fabric. And so it's just this wash of a singular color. But now that I've washed it and dried it, you can see the wonderful quilting grooves, and you can actually see the glory of the quilting pattern. I mean, it's beautiful on the front, but it's equally beautiful on the back. And then the binding I chose was just a really good old brown. It's just a good fall brown. It's like the color of a tree trunk. And it actually, if we were to show you up close, it actually has interlocking diamonds in this really subtle print that to me just was exactly what it called for. So here it is again. And like most quilts, especially the ones that are geometric and symmetrical, it almost creates a pattern within a pattern, the way the blocks interlock with each other, the lattice work. And as an added bonus, sorry, I'm looking for the tag. I have mentioned this on camera before, and I found the tags that say made with love and swear words. And I mentioned that I have wanted to have them and that they were sold out, and then I probably shouldn't have put it on a baby quilt, which I shouldn't put it on a baby quilt. But my father is going to get a huge kick out of it. So it does, in fact, say made with love and swear words, and he's going to laugh, and I'm going to laugh, and I'm hoping he'll use it. He is such an orderly individual. He will probably fold it neatly and throw it over the back of his couch because that's the way he is. And he doesn't know it's coming. Of course, it is January, so, he didn't even get a Christmas present. While I was homesick with COVID, he got no Christmas present. So that is the life cycle. We have been through it together with this fall quilt, from the shirt showing up in the thrift haul to the discussion of color theory and how I put the colors together, to the lessons that I learned about partial seams and using linen on the bias and starch to keep things straight, and then finishing the quilt top, and then my wonderful friend Sissy, who I have now said so much about, but it's so true. What a gracious and generous individual, and she did a fantastic job. And so now we have the whole entire story. What a wonderful ride that's been. It took me 3 months, and I finished the binding last night, maybe this morning. So 3 months and 2 weeks to do the whole entire thing. And as I've said before, quilting is slow, but here we are at the end of the fall quilt. Thank you for being with me. My name is Kathy Martin. This is the Catbird Quilts. Thanks so much for watching.